All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Progress with Portia, where we have real conversations to progress individuals and communities. I'm so excited today to have the one and only Bishop Joseph Walker III. Thank you so much for joining me today, Bishop.
I'm so happy to be with you. I tell you what, I've arrived. I've got on progress with Portia. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm so excited, Bishop, today to be talking about your book. You have a new book out called Leadership and Loneliness. Like I said, as soon as I saw the title, it definitely grabbed my attention. Looking at, like I said, anybody who's a leader, who's in leadership is very familiar with the word leadership, but they're also familiar with the word loneliness. And so, why did you feel compelled to write this book at this time?
Well, there are a couple of reasons why. One, leadership itself is tough business. It is not for the faint at heart. It has its own inherent challenges, and I felt it was important to speak to that and the trajectories and the different levels and altitudes that leaders deal with often cause them to experience this innate loneliness in terms of not having many folks to really identify and understand their plight, the struggle, their dreams and thoughts, etc. And to write this book at this particular time, particularly in the midst of a global pandemic, really added to, I think, the need for a book like this because leaders who are already feeling isolated and lonely
Right.
now is amplified by the current crisis that we find ourselves in today.
Right. No, and I think that's so, point like so significant as you stated, like bishops who already are feeling isolated or leaders who are feeling isolated because of their role. Then the pandemic, individuals feel isolated. Everybody has felt isolated in this time. But to what does that actually mean to leaders, and how are they actually maneuvering through this time? And so I think, like you said, just you writing this book in this time, I felt was just, of course, as always, I feel like, some people write books consistently. They're always putting out a new book. But I felt like every time I've seen when you put out a book, it's like a specific word for the time, for that season. And so that's what I felt like, it was just an on time word that leaders could grab a hold of and really, just embrace that to say, this is how I get through.
Yeah.
And so in your book, I feel like you kind of exposed a little more of your humanity. I've read several of your books. I feel like self in this book. Do you agree? And if so, why? What is the significance of that transparency as a leader?
Well, I think it's incredibly important for leaders to be human before people. I think there's a risk some leaders feel that their leadership will be undermined if they are not viewed as human beings. And I view the idea that uh, we often are trained to do. We're measured by how well we do. Uh,
Right.
do ministry is about doing, 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 doing. And so often we don't pause and reflect on who we be. Jesus did not open his first sermon and call it the do attitudes. He
Mhm.
dealt with the be attitudes, right?
Right.
'Cause we're not human doings, we're human beings. I
Right.
think it's important for us to be in touch with our own humanity, our own proclivities, our failures, our flaws, our strengths, our joys, because we bring all of that. He knew all about us when he called us, and he brought that aspect of us to the table. And we allow ourselves greater empathy when we are transparent before people and we reset expectations. The reason why people put leaders on pedestals like that and believe that they are invincible and they can't, struggle or certainly don't have pain is because we keep feeding the narrative that we're all right, the Lord is going to pull me through. I'm just strong. And, I
Right.
don't I'm being honest about the day that I have days I don't feel like it. I have days where I'm crushed. I have days where it takes a lot more for me to get out of bed. And so I think that's why it was important to be very transparent about in the book, but also to be it in life as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's, like I said, so admirable, because it is really hard when so many people put you up on a pedestal to sometimes reveal that humanity. And I really like that in the book that you kind of touched on it a lot and kind of re-emphasized that that they're not superhuman, that they're, that you are human, and you need to acknowledge that part of you. And so I thought that was just so powerful for individuals to be able to really hear that from someone who's walking in a very high level of leadership. And so, and to see you do that, like not only to hear you say it, but then to, again, see you to actually walk through those steps. And so,
Yeah, and I think,
mhm,
yeah, I think that's what gives it. I think real authenticity. I think
yeah,
that when someone who lives it out every single day. I wanted to write the book in a way where people saw me living it out, talking about my journey and how I was able to come to these places in my life.
right, right. And I know many people know you and your role in leadership in the church, but your reach spans far outside of the church into the marketplace. And so, can you share a word to those who are in the marketplace leading right now, maybe specifically Black leaders who are trying to lead in this pandemic? What is something that you can say to kind of encourage them in this season?
Well, I think there's some general principles of leadership that can help any person leading, whether it's in the marketplace or the church. I think there are similarities in that
Mhm.
regard. The first of which I think is important to take care of you. I think you have to protect the asset, and that's you. I believe that's the most important thing. If you're not together mentally, spiritually, physically, then what's the point? You're not going to be any good to anybody. And so it's important that you wake up every day and make certain that you protect the asset, which is incredibly important. There's a little book out there called Essentialism that I draw from now. And I think understanding, identifying what's essential is going to be important because you can't boil the ocean. You have to be very clear about what is essential as a leader that I'm going to address, and I'm not all over the place. And because you can have a sense of survivor mode, you can have a sense of, I got to be the hero in the pandemic. It's my responsibility to lead these people. All these are God's people, and you have to get
Right.
out the way and let God be God. You just have to take your orders and be specific about what you can do. One plants, another waters, but God gives the increase. So it's never on you to do it all. So I think, that's going to be important. I think thirdly, and most importantly here, the establishment of boundaries, right? To really be able to understand that words like no really are really an answer, because when you say yes to something, you simultaneously are saying no to something else. And so it's important that you have boundaries, that you don't have these encroachments upon your time because time is currency. And so you don't have it to waste.
That's good. That's so good. I think, the number one thing that you said right there, we are not God to individuals. And I think, really embracing that fact that God will take care. Like, you do your part and God will do the rest. And he didn't expect
Absolutely.
when he called you at all.
Right, right,
So you
right.
Okay, and so definitely you touched about, your journey, in the book. You kind of talked about your journey through leadership, and just now we were talking about, just the role of transparency. We talked about, even just how significant it is for people like, let's see, I'm sorry, I lost my place, but just the different key things that can help someone during the season. How did you get to this point in your own journey? And what was that transition like for you to be a leader? Because you were young, and then you were over a large, a large number of people. And you're still young, and now you're over Full Gospel Baptist. So you have so many. So what was that transition like for you?
Well, I think you have to come to a place where you have to embrace and own your difference and be able to walk into these spaces confidently and yet humbly at the same time. It was with great humility that I was called to be a pastor of a church at a young age, to be a presiding bishop, one of the youngest in the world, and to lead in other areas, to chair a university board. These are opportunities that I view with incredible humility, but I also walk in those with great confidence because I understand that there's a great stewardship in those platforms. There's a great opportunity in those moments. And so for me, it's being able to manage those platforms in a way whereby I can better serve God's people and utilize that platform for empowerment, education, elevation, all those things that matter. And I think that that's going to be key, right? Because some people, I often say, my end game, Portia, is like the progression of my mentoring goes like this. I say stages are for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Platforms, they basically feed your ego.
Mm,
but deals are made at the table, right?
mm,
And you see
mm,
people fighting for platforms because it's like they feel good if they get a certain platform. But when you
right.
get to the table, that's where deals are made. And so I want leadership. I view my leadership not on the platform. I view my leadership as being at the table where I can make things happen in the lives of other people before they even realize it's going on.
That's so good. Yeah. And then in that, how prepared were you when you first started?
Well, let's see. When I first started pastoring Mount Zion, I was theoretically proficient, but practically illiterate. I was right out of seminary. I had a lot of book sense, but I did not know how to pastor nobody. So I was not as prepared. It was on the ground training. A presiding bishop, same thing. I was not prepared to be a presiding bishop. How would I? What's the school? There's no school of presiding bishops. So I had
Right.
to learn on the ground training. Bishop Morton was gracious enough to share best practices with me. But he said even recently something that I think it shook the entire foundation of our fellowship. He said, I can teach Bishop Walker a lot of things, but what I can't teach him is how to be a presiding bishop in a pandemic. He got to
Wow.
learn it for himself. And that's exactly what's going on, right? I'm trying to figure this out, learning it. And it's a major responsibility, but one in which I truly, truly embrace.
Right. That's so good. And then why do you think right now, why do you think leaders need to read your book? Because it's out there. We know the title is powerful, but why does someone need to
Yeah.
pick up the book and actually read it?
Portia, I really think that leaders need to read it because I think there's no book out there like it. Bishop Jakes talked about it in one of his sermons. He referenced the book. Other leaders have talked about. There's no book out there that really brings these two areas together, like
Yeah.
leadership and loneliness.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important for one, the leaders read it because they will know they're not alone. You'll recognize that you're not the only one dealing with loneliness and isolation, etc. And you also have some of the same challenges. I talk about, what it's like to be in a fishbowl. Where can a goldfish go in a fishbowl and it can't be without being seen? So there's a lot of your life being ripe for public consumption and things of that nature that are just out there. And so it's important for leaders to read it because it gives you practical strategies on how to navigate the inevitable seasons you go through that are par for the course for leadership.
Right. No, definitely. And I mean, I know like in this season, I had the access to more marketplace leaders, and
Yeah,
I hear so many things that they're talking about. And I just, serving in the church for so long in full gospel, I think that full gospel, we do a wonderful job in training leaders and kind of, preparing people. And some of the things I hear them struggle with, I feel like, y'all have to take some lessons from the leaders in the church because the things that they're struggling with I've seen happen in the church. And so for
yeah,
me, I even focus on that marketplace because sometimes people in the marketplace don't realize that there's resources in the church realm, whether you feel like you believe exactly how they believe or not, there are resources because
yeah, yeah,
in full gospel, like I said, we do a great job in training leaders and preparing them, I feel.
absolutely, absolutely.
And so that book, I think, definitely is just something that would help marketplace leaders as well as church leaders in any realm.
Italy, and the beauty of it is I've had, presentations with the book to universities. I've had, I had McDonald's Corporation. I did a workshop, talked about the book with them. They bought it for their regional leaders and folks, and it's been just a blessing in the marketplace. And I think that it is important for them to see it beyond just a church leadership book. It's about leadership in any particular capacity.
Yes, yes. And I know we're talking about leadership and loneliness and sometimes the struggles that come with it, but with leadership, there also comes rewards, there also becomes blessings. And so in your role of leadership, what was the most rewarding aspect for you in leadership? Because sometimes the loneliness, the different things can overshadow it and we can begin to
Yeah.
resent the fact that we are considered a leader.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the most rewarding part for me has been continuously watching lives be transformed by what God does through me.
Hmm.
Uh, Even this many years later, to still see Mount Zion Church, to see Full Gospel, to see other areas of my life still progressing because of that. And to me, I think that just is what that gives me so much joy.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it's really important for people to have that aspect of what is the reward for you, because sometimes the pressure can become so much. Like I said, that
It
people
can be.
resent the fact that they're in this position to the point that they even sometimes want to shun the responsibilities. And I'm not gonna lie, I mean, I have sometimes like, Lord, I don't want this. I'm dealing with
Go on the crowd on that. Yeah.
and so it is, it's good to remember that. And then what are some unexpected blessings that have come with leadership? That I know there's rewards, but then what is something like, wow, I never would have expected that as a leader, this type of opportunity or this type of experience, or that this would happen?
I'll just say it this way. I think some unexpected things, like there are particular people, relationships that have been built and opened up to me, tables I've been invited to that I never would have imagined
Wow.
in my life. And I
Mhm.
think, I guard those relationships very close to the hip, and, those people. But there are just certain people, certain relationships that I'm like, wow, that it's still to this very day, it blows my mind that I have those opportunities and relationships.
Right. So the favor and opportunities that come from when we
Favor.
walk when we walk in obedience to it, there's favor, there's opportunities, doors that are open, like you said, that we could never have imagined or even open. We couldn't have created those opportunities if we tried. But God will do it and honor that obedience, when we honor the
Right.
obedience to
Not
that
right.
we called us to.
Amen. Yes. Amen.
And so what is your favorite chapter in the book? Like, as you read your book, like what chapter is like, this really speaks to
I,
me?
I, think, I think the last chapter, I talk about leading from the middle, reimagining how you lead. I've always been a leader that led from the middle, which was counterintuitive to a lot of people who view my leadership. You should be out front more. You should let people know you're the leader. I'm like, no, I just think the model of leading from the middle is an opportunity to allow you greater empathy with people. You feel people's pain. You are able to hear their heart, and you're not so far ahead of the people that you miss out on what people are dealing with and struggling with. And so, me being very relational like this is because it's an effort to be a leader from the middle. Me, I remember one day sitting in Starbucks in Baton Rouge, and you just happened to come in randomly working, and we just talking for a little bit. I mean, it's that kind of, I mean, I'm a presiding bishop, right? But I'm sitting chilling up in Starbucks. I mean, this is, for me, it's like I just believe that that's what God called us to do, is to be relatable, relational, and lead from the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something I've always admired about you, your ability to be able to do that, because it is challenging to be able to kind of make that balance,
The balance,
and
yeah,
try to
it is absolutely.
to to walk in that place of leadership and where people honor, respect it, but at the same time remain human, like you said. And that's the next point. My next question, you had mentioned about people not being a superhero, remembering their own humanity, not being an autopilot. So what do you say to someone who's struggling from that? Maybe they don't know how to lead from the middle. Maybe they've lost themselves in leadership. What
Man,
would you say to encourage
you
them?
need therapy. You need therapy. You need somebody to talk you out of this. The fact is, you have taken on something and you have owned it, and you feel like nobody else can get it done but you. And that's a poor model of leadership. And sometimes that's just such covering up something much deeper. You are
Mm,
using work to anesthetize you from something deeper. And that's what I
wow.
mean by therapy, like really having someone to talk to about that, because God can get this work done without us.
Right.
God can get this stuff done without us. That's what COVID-19 should have taught all of us.
Mm, mm. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely just, recognizing again, like you said, God's gonna be God. And he, like you said, he can speak through an animal, he can speak through
Whatever.
a billboard sign, he can speak however
Whatever.
he wants to speak.
Amen.
Right. And so
Amen.
that's so good. And I know I kind of chuckled when you said therapy, but I am a strong proponent of therapy. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I believe everyone should have a therapist, just like they have a primary care physician. Wait, let me say it this way. Like, you should have a primary care physician, because everyone does not
Yeah.
have a primary care physician. You should
Yeah.
have a primary care physician you should have a therapist, and not feel any shame in talking to somebody, because we all, and especially in the world we live in now, all the things that are happening, we all need somewhere to go process, to release,
Right.
to even COVID-19 alone in and of itself. That's enough to make somebody need to go sit down and talk
You're
to a
right.
therapist.
Amen.
So, and my last question, Bishop, is just how are you, and how are you and your family? How have y'all managed during the pandemic?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to get a little bit more rest these days because now we're having to think through what re-engagement is going to look like in the second half of the year. Family's doing well. Kids are running me crazy. That's why I stay in that gym, trying to my best. But we're doing fine. And thank you for asking that question. We're pushing through, and thanking God for the opportunity of day to wake up and to be able to service people.
Yeah, and I thank you. I just want to thank you again so much for your leadership, for your sacrifice, and just for how you serve in excellence, and then again how you remain humble, human. You allow us to see your humanity, and I think that's part of the reason why again you see the level of elevation you have, because of that humble spirit, because of keeping God at the center and serving. Of course, it's just part of the call on your life. That God has just chosen you for this hour, for this. But thank you, and thank you so much for everything that you release to the people.
I appreciate you so much, and thank you for this opportunity. And the work that you're doing is amazing. You are a gift to us in Full Gospel, and I hope that the book just blesses you and blesses everyone who hears this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.